Right now, somewhere in the world, a 25-year-old and a 55-year-old are making the exact same financial mistake, and neither of them realizes it's costing them hundreds of thousands of dollars. Here's the strange part. Money doesn't actually get harder to manage as you get older. It just changes shape. The rules that made you broke at 22 are not the same rules that keep you broke at 45, and the habits that build wealth in your 30s can actually work against you in your 50s. Most people never learn this. They apply the same financial mindset to every decade of their life, and wonder why they feel stuck, no matter how much they earn. So in the next 25 minutes, we're going to walk through every single stage of financial life, from the moment you get your first dollar to the moment you're planning what happens to your money after you're gone. Not vague tips. Not just save more. Advice. The actual turning points, the actual traps, and the actual moves that separate people who build real wealth from people who just get by. Stick around, because stage 4 is the one almost nobody gets right, and it's the one that decides everything that comes after it. Introduction. Think of financial life like a video game with levels. You can't skip levels. You can't jump from level 1 to level 8 and expect to survive. Each stage has its own goals, its own dangers, and its own version of winning. We're going to break this down into 8 stages. The foundation years, childhood, and early exposure to money. The first paycheck era, your late teens and early 20s. The debt and discipline stage, building financial control. The foundation of wealth, saving and investing basics. The growth decade, compounding, and career acceleration. Peak earning, years, wealth building at full speed. The transition stage, pre-retirement decisions, legacy and freedom retirement, and what comes after. Each one builds on the last. Skip one, and the next one gets a lot harder. So let's start right at the beginning. Because believe it or not, your financial life started long before you ever earned a single dollar. Stage 1. The foundation years. Here's something researchers have found again and again. Most people form their core beliefs about money before they turn 7 years old. Not their knowledge, their beliefs. Whether money is scary, whether money is shameful, whether money is something you fight over or something you plan with. This matters because those early beliefs quietly run in the background for the rest of your life, like an operating system you never chose. If you grew up in a household where money was never discussed, you likely developed either anxiety around it or complete avoidance. If you grew up watching arguments about bills, you might associate money with conflict. And if you grew up seeing money handled calmly, budgeted, planned, discussed without panic, you probably picked up a completely different relationship with it, even if no one ever sat you down and taught you finance. The takeaway here isn't about blame. It's about awareness. A lot of adults spend years fighting financial habits without realizing those habits were installed decades before they had any say in the matter. Recognizing where your money mindset came from is often the first real step toward changing it. And that leads directly into the next stage, the moment everything becomes real. Stage 2. The first paycheck era. There's a specific feeling tied to your first real paycheck. It feels like freedom. And in a lot of ways, it is. But it's also the stage where most people build the habits that will either help them or haunt them for the next 20 years. Here's the trap almost everyone falls into. Lifestyle expansion. The moment income increases, spending increases right along with it, often faster. A slightly better apartment, a car payment, food delivery instead of groceries. None of it feels reckless in the moment. It feels like a reasonable reward for finally earning money. The problem is, this stage sets your baseline. Whatever spending habits you build here tend to stick, even as your income grows later. This is why it's common to meet someone earning a high salary who still feels financially stressed. Their lifestyle grew exactly as fast as their paycheck did. The single most useful move in this stage isn't complicated. It's paying yourself first, before rent, before fun, before anything, setting aside even a small percentage of every paycheck, automatically, before you ever see it in your spending account. It sounds almost too simple to matter. But the people who build this habit early rarely struggle with saving later, because it's never a decision, it's already automatic. This stage is also where most people get their first real introduction to debt, which brings us to the next level, and where financial success often gets decided. Stage 3. The debt and discipline. Stage debt itself isn't the villain most people think it is. The real issue is what kind of debt, and whether it's working for you or against you. There's a useful way to separate debt into 2 categories. Debt that builds something, and debt that just disappears. A loan for education that increases your earning potential, or a mortgage on a home that grows in value that's debt attached to an asset. Credit card debt on things that lose value the moment you buy them, that's debt attached to nothing. The danger in this stage is what's sometimes called minimum payment, thinking only ever paying the smallest amount required, month after month, while interest quietly multiplies in the background. High-interest debt compounds against you, the same way investments compound for you, just in reverse. That's the uncomfortable truth. Compound interest is neutral. It doesn't care whether it's helping you or draining you, it just accelerates whatever direction you're already moving. The people who move successfully through this stage generally do one thing differently. They attack their highest interest debt aggressively, while still contributing something, even a small amount, toward savings. Not because the math is perfect, but because the psychological momentum of doing both at once tends to keep people from giving up entirely. Once debt is under control, something shifts. This is the stage where people stop reacting to money and start directing it. And that's exactly where stage 4 begins. The stage most people either get right for the rest of their lives or get wrong for the rest of their lives. Stage 4. The foundation of wealth. This is it. This is the stage that decides more than any other. Here's why. This is the stage where saving turns into investing. And those two things are not the same, even though people use the words interchangeably. Saving protects money. Investing grows it. If you only ever save, inflation slowly erodes your money's real value every single year, even while the number in your account stays the same or grows slightly. $1 sitting in a low-interest account today buys noticeably less 10 years from now. Saving is essential for safety, but it was never designed to build wealth on its own. Investing is where compounding actually starts working in your favor. And compounding is deceptively simple. It's earning returns not just on the money you put in, but on the returns that money has already earned. Early on, this feels almost invisible, slow, unimpressive, even discouraging. But compounding isn't linear. It's exponential. It looks unimpressive for years, and then it looks unstoppable. This is why financial professionals so often repeat the same phrase. Time in the market matters more than timing the market. Someone who starts investing modestly in their 20s will very often outperform someone who invests much larger amounts, starting in their 40s, simply because compounding needed more time to build momentum. The most common mistake in this stage isn't picking the wrong investment. It's waiting to know more, waiting for more money to start with, waiting for the right moment. Every year of waiting isn't neutral. It's a year of compounding that can never be recovered. The second most common mistake is the opposite, extreme, taking on far more risk than necessary, chasing fast results instead of steady growth. Real wealth building tends to look almost boring from the outside, consistent, diversified, unglamorous. The people who treat investing like entertainment usually end up funding the accounts of people who treat it like a long-term plan. Once this foundation is in place, some debt control, consistent saving, and steady investing, the next stage isn't really about learning new concepts. It's about acceleration. Stage 5. The growth decade. This stage usually overlaps with the years when income tends to rise the fastest, as people move deeper into their careers, gain experience, and take on more responsibility. The critical skill here isn't managing money, it's managing raises. Every time income increases, there's a fork in the road. Let lifestyle rise with it, or let savings and investing rise with it instead. This single decision, repeated over and over across a decade, quietly determines whether someone ends up financially comfortable or financially strained, regardless of how much they eventually earn. A useful approach many people use here is directing a fixed percentage of every raise, not the whole thing, just a meaningful portion straight into savings or investments before it ever becomes part of the regular budget. This allows lifestyle to improve gradually, without erasing the entire benefit of earning more. This is also the stage where diversifying income tends to matter. Not necessarily starting a business or working extra jobs, though for some people it is that, but rather not relying on a single source of income as the only financial safety net. A second stream, even a small one, changes the entire risk profile of a person's financial life. By the end of this stage, if the earlier habits held steady, something significant starts to happen. Investments begin contributing meaningfully to net worth, sometimes more than the paycheck itself. That's the entry point into the next stage, the one people spend the most years in, and the one where wealth either compounds into real security or quietly stalls. Stage 6. Peak earning years. This is usually the highest income stretch of a person's working life. And ironically, it's often the stage where financial mistakes become the most expensive, simply because the dollar amounts involved are larger. The biggest risk here is what could be called lifestyle creep at scale. Earlier in life, overspending might cost someone a few $100s a month. At peak earning, the same mindset can cost thousands. A larger income doesn't automatically create wealth, it just increases the size of whatever habits are already in place, good or bad. This stage is also when many people confront a specific, often uncomfortable question. Am I saving enough for the future, or just for right now? Retirement can feel distant and abstract during peak earning years, especially while juggling other financial priorities, a home, children's education, aging parents. But this stage carries disproportionate weight, because contributions made here still have real time to compound before retirement, unlike contributions made in the final years before it. A practical approach many financial professionals recommend is reviewing not just how much is being saved, but where it's going, making sure retirement accounts, investment diversification, and risk levels are actually aligned with someone's real timeline, rather than habits formed a decade earlier and never revisited. This is also frequently the stage where people first start thinking seriously about protecting what they've built. Insurance, estate basics, and reducing unnecessary risk, not because something is expected to go wrong, but because the cost of being unprepared is now significantly higher than it once was. As peak earning years continue, a new question starts to emerge, almost quietly at first. Not how do I make more, but how much is actually enough? That shift in thinking marks the beginning of the next stage. Stage 7. The transition stage. This is the pivot point, usually the decade or so leading up to retirement, where the entire financial strategy has to change direction. Everything up to this point has been about growth. This stage is about protection. The logic that served someone well for 20 or 30 years, take on risk, stay invested aggressively, let compounding do the heavy lifting, starts to work differently as retirement approaches, simply because there's less time left to recover from a serious downturn. This is where the idea of shifting a portfolio's risk level gradually becomes important. Not eliminating growth altogether, but rebalancing so that a market downturn close to retirement doesn't devastate decades of progress. It's a subtle shift, but it's one of the most overlooked stages in financial planning, largely because it doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual adjustment, not a single decision. This stage also forces a very specific, very concrete question that a lot of people avoid until it's unavoidable. What does retirement actually cost? Not a rough guess, an actual number, based on expected living expenses, healthcare, and lifestyle. Vague plans tend to fall apart under real numbers. Specific plans tend to hold up. There's also an emotional side to this stage that rarely gets discussed. After decades of identity tied to a career and a paycheck, stepping away from both can be genuinely disorienting, regardless of how strong someone's finances look on paper. The strongest transitions tend to involve planning for that shift, not just the financial side, but the practical, day-to-day side of what life actually looks like next. Once that transition is planned and the numbers are in place, the final stage begins, and it looks completely different from every stage before it. Stage 8. Legacy and freedom. This stage is often misunderstood as the finish line. It isn't. It's a different kind of financial life altogether, one where money shifts from being built to being used, and eventually, to being passed on. The central challenge here is longevity risk, the very real possibility of outliving one's savings. This is why retirement withdrawal strategy matters just as much as retirement savings did. Pulling money out too aggressively in the early years of retirement can quietly undermine decades of careful planning, especially if it coincides with a market downturn. This stage is also where legacy starts to become a real financial conversation, rather than an abstract idea. Decisions about what happens to remaining assets, whether that's supporting family, causes, or simply ensuring a smoother transition for the people left behind. This is typically the point where having clear, updated legal and financial documentation stops being optional and becomes essential. And there's something worth noting here that connects all the way back to stage 1. The beliefs and habits someone builds around money in this final stage are often the very same ones they pass down, intentionally or not, to the next generation. The cycle that began with a child observing how their parents handled money often completes itself here, as that same person becomes the example for someone else. Conclusions. So here's the real through line across all 8 stages. Financial success was never about a single decision, a single investment, or a single lucky break. It's a sequence, each stage setting up the conditions for the next one to succeed or struggle. Early beliefs shape early habits. Early habits shape early debt decisions. Debt decisions shape whether investing starts on time. Investing timing shapes how powerful the growth years become. And every stage after that is largely just momentum. Compounding forward or compounding backward, depending on what was built earlier. The most important thing to take from this isn't which stage you're in right now. It's recognizing that the habits appropriate for your current stage might be completely wrong for the one you're heading into next. Financial success isn't about doing one thing perfectly. It's about knowing which game you're actually playing at each point in your life. If this helped you see your own financial stage a little more clearly, let me know in the comments which stage you're in right now. It genuinely helps shape what we cover next. And if you want the next video to go deeper into any one of these 8 stages, subscribe, because that's exactly what's coming. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.